Good day, madam. We'd like for you to give us a room and a bath, please.
I can give you the room, but you'll have to take the bath yourself.
Hello, and welcome to the Laurel and Hardy blogcast. It's great to be embarking on yet another episode with you. For those of you who are new to the podcast, I'm Patrick Vasey, the author of the Laurel and Hardy blog, and this is episode 11. This podcast series is following the movie career of Laurel and Hardy, film by film, in the chronological order that they were filmed, not released, and as such, today's picture up for discussion is the 1927 silent short, Putting Pants on Philip. And I'm thrilled to say that joining us on today's show is returning guest, film historian and author of the Laurel and Hardy Encyclopedia, the wonderful Glenn Mitchell. In addition, we'll also be paying tributes to one of the boys' regular co-stars from this period, Dorothy Coburn. So that's all coming up. But first, I was asked a question recently in our Blogheads community by Claire. She wanted to know what the two pieces of music are that we start and end the blogcast with. Well, Claire, firstly, thanks for your question. And I can tell you that the intro music that we start every show with is a track called Smile When the Raindrops Fall. It was written by Alice K. Howlett and Will Levenash and was first used by the Roach Studios in the 1930 Charlie Chase short Whispering Whoopee. Now, you may recognise it from films like Hog Wild, also from 1930, and it's also the record that's playing in the boys' car at the start of Busybodies from 1933. Then the outro music it's a jaunty little piece written by the great Leroy Shield, and that's called If It Were Only True, and it's notably featured in the boys' 1931 short One Good Turn. Both tracks are performed and recreated perfectly and wonderfully by the fabulous Bo Hunks Orchestra, and as always I've provided affiliate links to purchase their CDs that contain both of those tracks and many more besides in the show notes. And also on the shop page of the Laurel and Hardy blog website as well. So I hope that answers your question, Claire. I'm always happy to answer any questions that I can, so please feel free to send them in to me via social media, or you can email me. You can email me at laurelandhardyblog@gmail.com. And I also wanted to say a huge thank you to Mark Stanton for the fabulous review and the 5-star rating that you left me on Apple Podcasts. It was such a lovely surprise to read that this morning, and it means such a lot to me to know that you're enjoying the podcasts and that you've also taken the time to write and show your appreciation. So thank you for your continued support, Mark. It is much appreciated.
1,000 thanks.
So that's about it for our little preamble, although I do have a bit of an announcement to make, but I'll save that for the end of the show, so do please stick around for that. So on with the show. Fasten your kilt, check your sporrans on straight, and if you're ready, we will get straight into it now. And today's film in focus is Putting Pants on Philip. It was filmed September 13th to September 23rd, 1927. It was released on December the 3rd, 1927. Produced by Hal Roach, directed by Clyde Bruckman and supervised by Leo McCary, photographed by George Stevens with titles by H.M. Walker. The main cast: Stan Laurel, Oliver Hardy, Dorothy Coburn, Harvey Clark and Sam Lufkin. As the third picture made since their official announcement as a comedy team, the boys' chemistry sparkles in this two-reeler, and despite their output continuing to be released as part of the Roach All-Star series, in reality, Stan and Babe were now making Laurel and Hardy comedies. It wasn't until the following year that they were actually elevated to headliners of their own series, but nonetheless, their comedy juggernaut was finally up and running, and the laughs would keep on coming. Building on the excellent start made in their previous two pictures, The Second 100 Years and Hats Off, Stan and Babe had clearly begun to develop two new identifiable and lasting characters, two friends taking on the world together, the duo that would very quickly become recognised around the world under such names as Stan and Ollie, Dick and Doof, Gog och Gok, Crick and Croc, and Flip e Flap. The boys' pre-team years were littered with false starts and disparate characters, but before they were allowed to settle into what would become their forever screen personas, there was one final detour still to take: Putting Pants on Philip. Babe, in the role of Piedmont Mumble Thunder, resplendent in a sharp suit and straw boater, is a dignified and respected gent around town. We join him waiting at the dock for his nephew, whom he has never seen before, to disembark the SS Miramar, previously featured in Sailors Beware. He's newly arrived from his native Scotland to visit his uncle and be introduced by him to America. Whilst waiting, Mumble Thunder and the assembled crowd are highly entertained by the antics of a young Scotsman on the dockside, complete in kilt, sporran and tam o'shanter, resisting the examination from the ship's medical doctor, biting the thermometer in half, and refusing out of sheer embarrassment to allow his vaccination mark to be inspected. By way of the title card, Hardy's character turns to his neighbour and laughs, "Imagine, somebody has to meet that!" Of course, he swiftly, and to his absolute mortification, realises that he is that somebody. The simpleton in front of him is his nephew Philip. Stan, in the role of Philip, is overjoyed to identify his uncle from a photograph, and we learn from a letter sent from Philip's mother to Uncle Piedmont that Philip's one weakness is women. At the sight of a pretty girl, he has spots before his eyes. Guard him well. As author Randy Skretvet tells us, all the action up to this point had been filmed on Roach Studio sets, but now the location changes briefly to a dockside setting shot at the port of Los Angeles. Mumble Thunder takes his nephew to a quiet corner and tries to work out what to do with him, when a young lady, Dorothy Coburn, walks by and Philip immediately performs a double scissor kick and prepares to chase after her. He's stopped in his tracks by Uncle Piedmont, who acknowledges that this nephew of his could cause him some major public embarrassment. The film's plot is very simple, yet very funny. Mumble Thunder's primary objective is to merely walk through town without being embarrassed by Philip. This proves to be impossible, as Philip excels at drawing ridiculous amounts of attention from the passing townspeople, as it seems that nobody in small-town USA has ever seen a man in a kilt before, especially one that becomes crazed at the first sight of a pretty girl. There are some great tracking shots by the boys' regular cameraman George Stevens along the pavements of Culver City, where the uncle insists the nephew walk a good few yards behind him to ensure the two are not identified as being together. For the keen-eyed audience member, there is also a sneaky peek of the camera crew to be had in the reflection of one of the angled shop windows. Filming then moves to the Roach backlot as the boys pass in front of the establishment The Pink Pup, which is to be found in a number of the boys' films, including Love 'Em and Weep, Their Purple Moment, and That's My Wife. Huge crowds of over-enthusiastic locals are now following the boys everywhere they go, and one of the film's biggest laughs comes as Philip walks over a ventilation grating and his kilt is blown up, exposing his tartan boxer shorts. The crowd finds this hilarious. This happens a couple of times before the gag's final payoff occurs. As Mumble Thunder's berating the assembled throng, Philip takes a snort of snuff, which makes him sneeze explosively, causing his underwear to slip down around his ankles, and unbeknownst to everyone, he steps out of the aforementioned undercrackers and steps onto another pavement vent that blows his kilt up again. This time, the unexpected crowd see more than his boxers, causing a number of ladies from the gathered mob to faint instantly. A cop who, up to this point, has been laughing and pointing along with the crowd, angrily informs Piedmont, "This dame ain't got no lingerie on," leaving Uncle to sort things out again. All this makes Philip a very animated character indeed, and because of that, it's easy for the viewer's attention to be drawn to him. But this is where Oliver Hardy's genius shines through magnificently. In fairness, he isn't given that much to do. His only real task throughout the film is to react to Stan and all that's going on around them. But this is the area where Babe Hardy excels above all others. The ability to subtly play his role in the background, not appearing to do all that much, but in actual fact, he's stealing every scene with his mannerisms, small gestures, double takes, and discreet looks to camera. His performance in Philip was a notable moment in Babe's development. Here, in this picture, Babe Hardy was visibly fine-tuning the traits that would make Ollie such a wonderfully memorable character. As John McCabe notes in his biography, Babe, The Life of Oliver Hardy, Babe's appearance in Putting Pants on Philip generated increased respect around the studio. He was already well-liked both personally and professionally, and in the latter category, he was much sought after on the lot. Today, the film appears to have mixed reputation, with many people celebrating it as hilarious fun, while some critics consider it vulgar, and others, including notable authors William K. Everson and Simon Luvish, respectively, describing what they perceive to be homosexual humour. These arguably questionable descriptions emanate chiefly from the scene that gives the picture its title, namely the measuring of Philip for a pair of pants in the tailor's shop. Mumble Thunder decides to take the only action that he feels will stop his endless embarrassment, and that is to replace the kilt with a pair of trousers. Philip is clearly unsure about the fitting process, and whilst he is trying to be cooperative, he is very wary of the tailor and where he's trying to place his tape measure. Stan's pantomime performance is sublime here, as he moves delicately from being reluctantly willing to shocked and bemused, then to hurt and betrayed by his uncle. Finally, once the measuring has been successfully performed off-camera by Mumble Thunder himself, Philip reappears, his clothes totally dishevelled and looking like, as John McKay puts it, a newly and unwillingly deflowered maiden. One really feels for Stan at this moment. In no time at all, he's transformed from a rampant sex-crazed demon to a fragile and damaged soul. It surely would take a viewer with a heart of stone not to sympathise with Philip as he gingerly sits, head bowed, and cries into his kilt. This is excellent storytelling, expertly mixing humour with pathos, and as William K. Everson correctly identifies, wisely the situation is not milked, the point is made, and the comedy moves briskly on to something else. That something else is Philip's immediate and stealthy escape from the tailor shop in order to resume chasing Dorothy Coburn around town. After several more gags based around Philip's amorous pursuits and the subsequent crowds that he draws, the film ends with Dorothy Coburn gaining the upper hand and Uncle Piedemont's crushing fall from grace as his pomposity leaves him neck-deep in a huge, dirty curbside puddle, a motif that would be revisited on numerous occasions through Babe's maturing career. Generally speaking, the film's reception was very positive, and the Film Daily led the way with this review on the day following its release. Film Daily, 4th of December 1927. A simple yet effective idea furnishes the comedy, which features Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy and which Leo McCarey directed. A young Scotchman clad in kilts arrives from the Heatherland, and his laughable appearance attracts crowd after crowd, causing much embarrassment to his unappreciative uncle. Beautiful women are the stranger's weakness, and this makes matters worse and highly funny. Much of the film, which is generously loaded with laughs, shows the American relative trying to put a pair of civilised pants on the Scotchman. While still applauding the comedy, some contemporary critics made sure to acknowledge the divisive sequence in the tailor shop, as this review by T.C. Kennedy, printed in Motion Picture News, December 9th, 1927, illustrates. This picture is much better than its title would indicate, working greatly to the advantages of the film and to the enjoyment of those who like laughs in their comedies are Stan Laurel, a capital comedian, and Oliver Hardy, who knows many of the most effective tricks of screen fun-making. Clyde Bruckman directed the piece. If he built up the story as well, he deserves much credit for inventing some surefire gags. Along with that, he, if responsible he is, must take some criticism for playing too strongly on the incident of measuring Philip for a pair of pants in the tailor shop. This is topped off with a bit of acting by Laurel, which must be rated as excellent work from the acting standpoint. But it is a comedy that seems just a bit too sophisticated for the average two-reeler. It is a diverting picture despite a rough spot here and there on its rather slick surface. From Moving Picture World, 10th of December 1927, Hal Roach has a sweet one in this for comedy, diverting situations and a clowning idea that is put across in sprightly fashion by Stan Laurel. Laurel, as a young Scotch immigrant, come to this country to quote the titler, to recover a $50 lost by a relative in 1888. He has a great foil in Oliver Hardy as the Scots relative, assigned to look after him in the new land. The plot revolves about Hardy's efforts to supplant Stan's kilties with pants. In the so doing, uproarious burlesque results. The action is fresh, the situation is full of drollery, and the idea is original as has caught this reviewer's eye in months. Don't miss it. As one might expect, however, the subject matter wasn't for everyone, as these reviews demonstrate. I certainly can't say much for this one, about 2 giggles in the entire 2 reels. Photoplay Theatre, Ashland, Kansas. The comedy film Laurel and Hardy and Putting Pants on Philip is a bit raw in spots, but gets a laugh. From the Harrisburg Telegraph, June 12, 1928. Very funny for 3/4 of the way, but a little draggy in spots. Rex Theatre, Salmon, Idaho. One further noteworthy point about Putting Pants on Philip is its perceived status by some as being the first Laurel and Hardy comedy. Identifying which of the boys' pictures has the greatest claim to that title is arguably impossible, as there are a number of films with extremely good reasons and arguments to back them up. Duck Soup, Do Detectives Think, The Second 100 Years, and Should Married Men Go Home all have irons in the fire, but it was Philip that Stan Laurel and Hal Roach themselves named in later interviews as the boys' first team comedy. This is puzzling to me, as the characters are clearly not Stan and Ollie, the relationship is of uncle and nephew, and further, the official Roach Studios press sheet labelled it as the boys' second team film, even though it followed The Second 100 Years, previously promoted as the first, and hats off. With this level of confusion coming directly from the studio, it's small wonder that so many different opinions abound. Understanding how reluctant Stan was to become part of a team in the first place does in fact help to give some clarity and understanding regarding his thoughts on the importance of putting pants on Philip. Once again, Professor John McCabe, who knew Stan well and interviewed him many times during their friendship, wrote on this very subject in his biography of Babe Hardy. Quote, "It was certainly the first film in which Stan felt them to be a team, the first for which he made the total personal commitment to have a partner, the first in which both men experienced at fullest the chemistry between them that was to last their lifetimes."
The oddest thing about Laurel and Hardy was the first picture they ever made at the Hal Roach Studio. It's still the best picture they ever made.
Really?
And people, they don't even run it anymore. It was called Putting Pants on Philip.
That's what Putting Pants on Philip was the title, was it?
Putting Pants on Philip they had nothing to do with the team. Laurel was from Scotland, and he comes to stay with his cousin Hardy, and he wears a kilt. And Hardy does not approve of the kilt. So the whole picture was trying to put pants on Philip. I mean, that was a comedy. And Leo McCarey, one of the greatest directors of the business, wrote it and directed it.
Did he? Yes.
Yeah.
That was, of course, the boss, Hal Roach, speaking to the BBC in an interview on The John Dunn Show in 1991. Today on the blogcast, I'm thrilled to be welcoming back a very special returning guest. He previously joined us on episodes 6 and 7 when we discussed Do Detectives Think and Flying Elephants, and we also took a closer look at the lives and careers of Noah Young and Viola Richard. He's returning today to discuss Stan and Babe's 1927 outing Putting Pants on Philip, and also to explore another of their supporting players from these early years, the wonderful Dorothy Coburn. I'm really looking forward to this, so I'm thrilled to say, Glenn Mitchell, welcome back to the Laurel and Hardy blogcast.
Thank you, Patrick. It's good to be back.
It's great to have you back, Glenn. So, just briefly, what have you been up to since we last spoke? I think it was back in September we last had a chat.
September, yes, by George. Well, we're into another lockdown since then, and I've been occupied primarily in growing hair.
Yes, haven't we all?
Yeah, and if the next Wallace and Gromit movie is looking for a stunt double for Wimberley, I'm available.
Excellent.
No, I've been very busy growing hair, and still reworking the fabled graphic novel, which I did the last time we spoke.
Of course, yes.
Getting towards the end of it, not quite the very end of it, but coaching something I can kid myself looks like completion. So
very good. And we haven't. Do we have a publisher yet for the Buster Keaton Encyclopedia? Oh, Harold Lloyd was it? I forget which one we were going to go for next.
Oh well, no, the Lloyd's been done. Someone else did Lloyd, and no need for me to do it. And Keaton, no more thoughts about that. Nobody's come forward, and I don't think it's going to happen. It's not immediately. Right. So
perhaps after lockdown. Perhaps we'll get a break.
Well, like so many other things, like
yes.
getting to the end of the road.
That's right. Yes,
I had these great ambitions. My bird. One day, my son, you may be able to go back to the post office.
That's right. You'll see the other end of the street. It'll be wonderful.
Oh, it's beyond the blue horizon. Beautiful summer. Yeah.
No, that's it. No, the lockdown has certainly been keeping us out of trouble. That's for sure.
Yes, trouble. I remember that. Yeah.
So, Putting Pants on Philip, we are here to talk about Putting Pants on Philip today, it's a really fascinating film, actually, when you start looking at the detail and the sort of the background behind it. So, just a general overview, Glenn. What are your thoughts on Putting Pants on Philip before we get into the detail?
Well, unlike a lot of people, I've always liked it.
Yeah.
There are quite a few Laurel and Hardy aficionados who don't care for it for various reasons. Some of it is based on it being so atypical, and really a frustrating thought that they reverted to characters other than the usual ones after seemingly having settled on getting it right, which they've been on and off doing since Duck Soup. They didn't seem willing to stay with. Some people don't care for it for that reason. And there are those who think it's excessively vulgar. And it's certainly that. It's certainly a lot of what we might call honest vulgarity in it. Although curiously combined with some very, very clever effects and director touches. How much of this is the credit to director Clive Bruckman? How much of this was Leo McCarey, who I understand subsequently claimed really to have made it? No, we can't really say. But a lot of very clever things going on alongside some rather startlingly basic things. So I think that's what puts some people off. It's not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think it's quite interesting. I mean, I just should have, doing a bit of research, which might surprise people that I do a little bit of research before these, before we do these episodes. Just looking at some of the different authors that have written about Putting Pants on Philip, and what kind of William K. Everson, for instance, talks about the film has decided elements of homosexual humour, and I think also Walter Kerr in The Silent Clowns, was it?
Yes.
Walter, that's right. He also says the fact that the assault is taken as homosexual and Laurel doesn't even know what homosexuality is, blah, blah. It just, that's never sort of struck me that it's a homosexual humour. I mean, yes, it's they're trying to measure his inside leg measurement, but it's not exactly blatantly homosexual humour. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but, it's just a little bit much made of nothing, really.
Well, sensitivities vary according to period, but Everson was saying that in the 1960s, when somehow the atmosphere on that topic had got rather mixed, because this was a time when it was still, for a lot of people, very unacceptable, in a lot of places still illegal. Certainly was almost in the entire United States when he was writing. It was actually the same year that it became legal in England and Wales, in 1967. But it wasn't, a lot of people considered socially acceptable. It's sort of a bit of a shock topic. But the truth is that, as Everson points out, there was a lot of homosexual humour in late silent comedy. It was something that they hit upon for a while and became a thing to do gags about. And this continued into the early 30s, right up to the time of the production code in mid-34, by which time they were really pushing the envelope about risque humour of various kinds. They were pushing more and more. And there were a lot of gay gags, actually, in that period, for some reason. I like the ones actually in British comedy in the 70s, for some reason. There was an obsession then, but it was really wildly overdone. Just about every show had a cheap gay gag. So there are times when that as a topic of humour seems to be more in vogue than others. And it certainly was as of 1927, quite a lot of it. And, but yeah, I mean, I do see it as implied homosexual humour, but yes, Philip is naive. That's for sure. I mean, for all the enthusiasm for chasing women,
yes,
there's a strong sense that he wouldn't know what to do with Dorothy Coburn once he had caught up with her. They're actually very careful to emphasise from the word go in this film that he is innocent and naive. But there's a title card telling us he doesn't believe in Santa Claus, but still has faith in little Jack Horner. This tells us where Philip is in terms of maturity.
Yes.
And how much he actually knows. Not a lot. In that regard, he is a slightly better dressed alternative to Little Twinkle Star from Flying Elephants.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, there's not a lot of difference there. So, he is naive, but I think he knows enough that he doesn't want a man's hand thrust up his kilt. And he's going to be suspicious of the motives. So how much of that can really be called a direct reference to homosexuality, and how much of it is merely knowing that something's not right when somebody puts a hand up there.
Yes.
It's up to you to interpret, really. I'm not going to take it any further than that.
Yeah, although I mean, I have to say, Stan's acting in that scene I think is just phenomenal. He really portrays, somebody who has been what's the deflowered. I think is the expression.
Yes, I mean the fantastic reactions when he's being uber goosed essentially, and then afterwards, once Uncle has got his wicked way and taken the inside leg measurement, yes, he emerges like this deflowered virgin, hoping to think lost. And it's again, Emerson got it right. Actually, he saw an equivalent scene in Their First Mistake, but they turn it around. The business about being left with the baby, and it's Ollie now, who's the betrayed virgin left with stray offspring, and Laurel, the uncaring father, and all this. It's the same gag, just turned around. But the way it's played here, yeah. I mean, but all the funnier though, for the sheer incongruity of it. It's Buffet's two men anyway, but all he's done is been measured for a pair of trousers, and it's as if he has been seduced, betrayed, and abandoned. This is what happens when one's kilt principles are snatched away from one so cruelly.
Absolutely right.
Yes.
But no, and I think I think the point is fair that it is a frustration when you've gone from the preteen films and then we start to build the characters. We see the bowlers, the derbies, and the suits. I mean, obviously, Hats Off is missing, but it is to all intents and purposes visually very much Stan and Ollie. And then we come back again to this, don't we?
Yeah, and it's as if they didn't necessarily intend to continue consistently with the same two characters. I mean, why should they? It's very easy to see it from today's vantage point. But if you imagine how it must have been at the time when they were making these short comedies, finishing and on to the next, they were not working for posterity, and they weren't necessarily working for continuity between them. The important thing was that it was decided that they should become a regular team.
Yes.
Nobody said they necessarily had to play the same characters each time. And why should they? And I think it was probably only after this one that they realized there wasn't any point in varying it. I think at that point they thought they could still keep it fresh, keep it different, and keep going back to those two guys in the bowlers by all means, but not play them every time. But I think this was probably the one that made them decide that they should.
Yeah. And interestingly, it's the because it's the film that I think Stan himself and also Hal Roach identified later that this was the first Laurel and Hardy comedy. And I know this is I touch on this a few times. It's quite a debate and a disagreement as to which should be considered the first Laurel and Hardy comedy.
I never thought it should be.
No, I didn't. I don't think it should be. Where would you place your bet, Glenn? Where's your money resting? Which film is the first Laurel and Hardy comedy for you?
Well, it's Duck Soup.
It's Duck Soup, okay.
Yeah. However accidental, however non-permanent at the time, it's still the first one where they're playing in the format that we recognise. And I can watch this and accept it as a standard Ollie book.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
The fact that they regressed after that for several films doesn't matter. The first one. I get the feeling that this is an example of how people's memories after the event compartmentalize for convenience. 30 odd years later, thinking, people are asking them, what was the first one? How did this get going? And they remember that one because it's distinctive.
Yeah. And
I think that perhaps 30 years after the event or whenever, somebody would ask Hal Roach or Stan Laurel which was the first one. It was an easy one to remember because it was different. And you can arrange memories to suit yourself. Memory is a highly subjective thing. And this one, perhaps being different from the rest, might have been a good, their point of view, a way of saying, we started with this format, then we developed what we did later on, forgetting that beforehand they had done the other pictures in those visual characters. So I think there's an element of false memory syndrome and convenient memory syndrome. Because even the contemporary publicity didn't say it was the first one. They were saying in the publicity for this that it was the second one after Hats Off.
Yeah, that's right.
So it still doesn't hold up from the press sheets. And there are other reviews and other press releases which refer to after the second 100 years. One of them mentioned duck soup. And they say it's the second after duck soup doesn't make any sense either. And they all overlook the detective thing. So I don't pretend to understand this. I never have, and I never will.
Yeah, there's a really nice piece written by Jack McCabe in his biography of Babe, The Life of Oliver Hardy, and I love this because it just reads really nice, and it says that of this film, it was certainly the first film in which Stan felt them to be a team, the first for which he made the total personal commitment to have a partner, the first in which both men experienced at fullest the chemistry between them that was to last their lifetimes. And I think that's a really nice, I think that kind of explains in a way why Stan may have reflected back to think that was the first film, because that was for him at the time. He felt that right from here on in, I'm just with this guy, I'm just with Babe Hardy. So that kind of makes a bit of sense to me that on that front.
Yes, it does make sense. In the sense of it being the moment of acceptance.
Yes, yeah.
When they accepted this was it for the future. We are now a team. Because I think we know that Stan at least didn't want to be partnered initially. He was resistant to the idea of being part of a double act, and then saw that it was working and it was the best that he'd had up until then, and realised it was the best way. But we know he was reluctant. So yeah, a moment of acceptance.
We are buddies. Well, you certainly are a sorry-looking pair. We're not sorry. No, sir. We're just discouraged.
I had a question from our mutual friend Russell, and he was thinking that he has a very strong belief that Putting Pants on Philip is the first. It should be considered the first because it's kind of representative of a guy from the UK coming across, meeting a guy from America, getting together. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the partnership begins from that point.
Yes,
and we had a good discussion about it the other night, and I kind of said, but that would make Stan Ollie's nephew, which doesn't kind of work out.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Say that actually. Come to think about it, I think I thought about before this meeting of American and British talents there, but yeah, thinking about that. Making his uncle. What about, though, the relationship between Mumble Thunder, the Hardy character, and his sister, Philip's mother? Given that the uncle is supposed to be a complete, total American, he has a sister in Scotland who has produced Philip. In her letter, refers to America as your country. So what gives? Was the sister an emigre from the United States to Scotland? And if so, if she was originally from America, why would you say your country in that way?
Yes.
Or is he a Scottish emigre in America who is totally assimilated and become a local dignitary and is totally, absorbed the American way of life? So why is he so unacquainted with Philip's Scottish ways? Why doesn't he understand this?
This is true. Yeah, this is a good point. This is deep. We're getting into it deep now.
There you see, I can switch on profundity when I like. But no, I mean, okay. I mean, it's silly to read too much into this because it's a too real comedy. It wasn't meant to be looked into too deeply as we are doing, as people have been doing for decades. They were not, like I said earlier, they were working for the moment. They were not working for posterity, and a mere detail of convenience in a too-real comedy doesn't necessarily have to stand up to close scrutiny.
I think that's very true.
Yeah, but I have been wondering about this. Who was the emigre? The Hardy character or his sister?
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of that. That never crossed my mind, that one. I need to look more deeply into these two reelers.
No, it's dangerous.
Brilliant.
But, I mean, just a thought. It reminded me about the relationship between them, their uncle and nephew. It does throw up an interesting thing about Philip in that usually, or on a number of occasions, the normal relationship between Ollie and Stan has been compared to parent and offspring.
Yeah, true.
Rather than just friends. Ollie is the father who has to keep this idiot and unruly youngster in check. And he behaves like a father towards it, both in the kindly sense and in the disciplinary sense.
Yeah.
And Stan reacts like an admonished child much. and in a way, this uncle and nephew relationship points that up at least as strongly, because here it's a genuine family thing. Uncle as surrogate father, I suppose you could say, as father figure.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It does illustrate that aspect of their relationship, rather.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, which differs from most of them in that before we started this thing, you were asking me about how it compares to previous films such as Sugar Daddies and so on, the direction it might be. And the thing about those is that instead of starting out and already knowing each other as an existing unit, they are pushed together by circumstance. The lawyer and the butler and Sugar Daddies don't already know each other. There is no obvious bond or link between them, but they are press gang together into the story through circumstance. And that's what happens in Philip. They are brought together by plot. They don't really know each other. And that's a key difference between that and the usual films where they start out as a given. That's why, in a sense, Philip can be considered a retrograde step, because they do not start out as a unit.
Yeah, and maybe that's where the idea started to dry up, I guess. Yeah, they thought, I think, well, how many times can we come together by chance? We're better off starting together. It's a lot easier that way. Yeah.
It saves a great deal of exposition.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Also, just going back to the John McCabe book, the Babe biography, there's another nice piece in there about Philip, which talks about the inspiration for it, which I thought was quite interesting, which I think, just based on this assumption that it was there to kind of acknowledge the fact that it was the guy from Britain coming across. And I'll just read this out. This is Stan remembering. You'll probably know all this already. But it said, years and years ago, when I was with the Carno troupe, a chap called Alan I worked with told me of something that happened to him, and I never forgot it. I always thought it would make a good music hall sketch, and later, when that didn't happen, I had been thinking of doing it myself on the halls. I got it made into Putting Pants on Philip. What happened to Alan was this. He lived in the south of England, Brighton or Worthing, one of those towns, and he had a cousin from Scotland he hadn't seen for many years. Hadn't seen him from boyhood, in fact. But they had corresponded all that time, and when Alan was grown, he invited his cousin down to see him, and the cousin accepted. This cousin, whose name was very Scottish, Angus, or what the hell have you, arrived at Alan's, and Alan couldn't follow a word he said because Angus was from a part of Glasgow where even the average Scotsman could barely understand the dialect. Alan planned to take him out to dinner, and Angus got all dressed up in a pair of kilts, and Alan damn near died of embarrassment. He had made reservations at a fancy restaurant where he was sure kilts wouldn't be looked on as just the proper thing to wear, but they went anyway. By that time, Alan could half understand Angus's dialect, yet he had a hell of a time trying to translate to the waiter what his cousin wanted from the menu. Alan started to talk to his cousin in a sort of simple English, like you talk to a Hottentot who could only understand a few words of what you said, and he unconsciously started to talk in his loudest voice. And the waiter started to talk loudly, and Angus thought the waiter was hard of hearing, and he started to talk in his loudest voice, and it all grew to be one hell of a mess. As a matter of fact, I had close friends in Scotland, and it occurred to me after I got into pictures that it would be fun to guess what one of them wearing kilts might do if you visited me here in California.
Yeah.
which I think is great. I mean, that's such a tidy inspiration for a film, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it's very useful to have that, because if you look at it out of context, it would be inexplicable. What on earth would have prompted this?
Exactly.
But there we are. You see, these things always lie in the truth somewhere.
That's it.
The basis of comedy, of good comedy, should be grounded in truth, grounded in fact. You build comedy on falsehood, and you've automatically undermined it.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very true. Very, very true. Yeah, that's about all I've got in my notes here, actually, Glenn. So have you got any pearls of wisdom you can share then on putting pants on Philip?
Wisdom, that's right. Well, I went with Mr. Grimsdale a bit. Kilts, though, thinking of kilts. Stan obviously continued to mull this over in his head. I mean, only consider he did short kilts in 2024. He saw the people there, and I think this, that this was a thing that he could roll over in his mind, and Philip, it's fulfillment, I suppose. But yes, I mean, and of course, they took the full opportunity to turn up in kilts and they appeared on stage in Glasgow in 1947.
That's right. Yes, of course. Yeah.
And Bonnie Scotland, of course, in between.
Yes. He does have a history of kilts, doesn't he?
Yes. Well, how can I put it? There is a history of laugh getting via kilts. That's all there is to it. They are good comedy props. So, and Stan was never one to waste a good comedy prop or a good idea. So they were going to loom somewhat, but that's about as far as I can go on kilts.
That's fair enough.
I'm of Anglo-Scottish origins anyway, so I'm very thin ice. Absolutely true. I'm from a long line of these. Was a great grandfather was a clan chief.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so.
Wow. Oh, so you're the exact right person to be on this podcast then.
I don't wield a claymore. It's quite all right.
I must get you down for Bonnie Scotland then next time.
Oh, that's one of my least favourites. I have to admit. No.
I don't think you're alone.
No, I'm sure I'm not. But I think that we could say more about the characters, though, or the lack of. They've got characters, but they're atypical. And Hardy is called the Honourable Piedmont Mumble Thunder, the sort of gag names that were still giving them in the earlier ones. Typical kind of comedy title gag names. And it's come on, nobody knows anybody called Mumble Thunder.
I have a very great friend in Rome called Piedmont Mumble Thunder.
You must introduce us sometime. But he's obviously meant to be a big rig, though, because he's honourable, which in the States is a title we give to that judge.
Yes.
I don't think he's meant to be an expat from Britain who was an honourable over here. So
yeah.
Despite my speculation and all that. But returning to the subject of atypical aspects of the characters, Stan's repeated scissors kick.
Oh yes, of course.
Which of course he does when he's about to leap off in the direction of Dorothy Coburn. Sound instinct, I would say, but nevertheless, it's not typical of Stan Laurel. It's a very familiar acrobatic motif from music halls.
Right.
The one who was really into that actually was Lupino Lane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he did it a lot. He did it far too often, in fact, and also he would do a rapid, multiple version of it too. The kind of like an attack. I know, the kind of attack having a time, and he overdid it. I must say, I love Lupino Lane. He was one of the great, a master comedian. But if I have any criticism, is that he did the scissors kick too often. It was the common currency of the music hall. That's what Stan would have. And we don't seem to do it often. I'm trying to think when we do see it apart from Philip. There's a bit in Bratz where the two boys are circling around the room boxing.
Yes.
Stan does it once just for the laugh. And I think he does something not unlike that in another boxing bit where he's chasing along around the ring in any old port.
That's right. Yes, he does.
Bit of that. And I think there were one or two other one-off instances where he just did it. But
yeah, I think any old port, is the last occurrence he does of it, I think, if I remember rightly. But he certainly does it before that, and in the pre-team films he does, yeah. And obviously in Flying Elephants, it's abundant, isn't it?
Little Twinkle Star, he's just kicking everywhere, yeah. Oh, yeah. But no, it's something that was too obvious. It just too obvious stuff, and it doesn't fit into the character he wasn't going to do.
He does it in one good turn as well. I just thought he does it in one good turn as well, doesn't he? When he's about to beat Ollie up at the end, and he chases him out of the kitchen. Yeah,
one good turn. Again, licensed for the sake of frenzy, I think.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
he's acting out of character, this sudden wild man.
Yeah.
It makes more sense for him to do the Scissors King then. But
Come out of there. I won't. Now, you better leave me alone. Come out of there, you big bozo. I won't do it. No. I'll make you come out.
whatever its status within the nature of their teaming, it was very evidently one of their first big hits. Hats Off was the one that really established them. That was the one that made the big impact. But it hadn't even been released at the time they made Putting Pants On.
Yeah.
I think Hats Off came out in November. So that was still pending.
That's right. Yeah.
But they obviously made a huge impact and were not unnoticed by, shall we say, erstwhile competition.
Yeah.
over at Weiss Brothers, a much lower budget studio. Weiss Brothers had signed up some comedians who had frankly done more interesting things elsewhere. Ben Turpin, who'd had his best years at Black Senate.
Yeah.
SNA before that, but his peak. He was at Weiss Brothers by 1927. And so was Snub Pollard, who had been a star comic at Roach.
Right.
And they were looking at the success of the Laurel and Hardys, first Laurel and Hardys, and Ben Pollard with Marvin Loback, a rotund comic who is frequently spotted in Senates and elsewhere. People misattribute Oliver Hardy because of a resemblance to him.
Right.
Well, they used to. Then it's been sorted out now, but for many years, quite a lot of misattributed Oliver Hardy. And the resemblance was clearly appreciated at the time because they put Pollard and Loback together in Laurel and Hardy-like costumes, and they were making films that very sincerely flattered the first Laurel and Hardys. Translation, ripped them off royally. And Philip was one of them. They took elements of Putting Pants On Philip and the Battle of the Century and bolted them together into a film called Sock and Run. And that's got the business with the embarrassing visitor who draws unwelcome attention, and the Hardy character equivalent actually says, yes, imagine somebody has to meet Pat, just as Hardy says of Laurel in Putting Pants On Philip. They do it with Pollard and Loback. They do it in Sock and Run. And then he realises that this is the man he's supposed to meet, and he's stuck with him, this embarrassing man. And in the latter part of it, he's got him in the ring as a prize fighter. So but they don't do the kilts bit. But curiously, another one in the series takes the kilt aspect, kilt routine from Philip and puts it in there. So they were dividing up and rearranging Laurel and Hardy into their own films.
Yeah.
And the resemblance is terrifying and impressive. But yes,
it is a shameless copy, isn't it? It's a shameless copy, as you say. It's and also I think they stole a bit from Speedy as well, Harold Lloyd's Speedy as well. When they get to Coney Island, they appear at Coney Island, having left the boat, and then there's the dog tied up to the table full of crockery that gets ripped away.
Yeah. Oh, and backstage with his bum daddies, they rip that off as well. This is where Max has got the cord around his neck and the fence is being strangled against the fence. They did that as well. The one with the kilt, by the way, is called The Big Shot.
What's that, sorry?
The Big Shot.
The Big Shot.
Yeah.
So
those are both on YouTube if anybody's feeling masochistic enough. But they're fascinating to see, but outrageous rip-off.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about them is that there was a time when some people thought that Laurel and Hardy might just have been imitating them. Because somebody somewhere, I won't go into the details of who this might have been, misstated them being earlier than they actually were. And so people had no reason to disbelieve this and thought that actually Pollard and Loback were the originators of these routines and Laurel and Hardy were ripping them off. But no, fortunately, no, for posterity's point of view, no, the Pollard Loback things definitely post-date the Laurel and Hardys.
Yes, yeah. And one thing it does do is it just highlights just how good Stan and Babe were, though. I mean, watching Snub Pollard, they're just nowhere near as natural and as fluid, and it's just, Yeah, it's worth watching it just for that, just to re-experience just how good Stan and Babe actually were.
Yeah, how much they brought to the material. That's the thing. How much of it was them rather than the material.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you've got to think if you're going to rip somebody off that shamelessly, at least make it better. Do a better version of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm reminded of certain things that have been remade over the years where people think they can do a better job than the original.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I shall move swiftly on.
We won't get into that.
No. Naming no names, no films, no TV shows, no. But they are fascinating academically.
Yeah. And also just, looking at I find it quite interesting when you look at the silent comedies, they were a lot freer with where they were able to actually film because of, they weren't tied down to the sound recording technology. So we get those nice sort of dock scenes at the start of Philip.
Yeah. And here's an interesting thing. Because, of course, what they were doing was using the Hal Roach Studios loading bay to represent access to the quayside, as they did with Sailors Beware. It's the same prop arc ship, the Miramar, it's the same one.
Oh, that's right. Yes, of course.
And you see it again in Bonnie, Scotland, I think, supposedly as a ship's dock. It was a loading bay. But he put the camera in close enough, it looked like access to a quayside. And they intercut that with genuine location shots around the port of Los Angeles, San Pedro Harbor, and that interestingly has another place in silent film comedy history because Chaplin, when he was at Keystone, shot a half-reel comedy there called A Busy Day,
right? And
it was one of those things where the Keystone people would turn up at a genuine event to use it as a backdrop. Advantages of the various goings on. And on the 11th of April, 1914, the Port of Los Angeles had a big celebration for its expansion. They've been working on it for a couple of years to increase its capacity. They just opened the Panama Canal or something, which allowed much larger vessels in. And on that day, they had a big event, speeches, a dedication of the band playing and everything else. And the Keystone people turned up and shot a film against it. They had a ready-made parade, brass band, the whole thing, to take advantage of. And Chaplin was in drag, by the way, just extra detail there. But that's what it was. It was the reopening of San Pedro Harbor after its expansion. And that's
interesting.
Yeah, and that's where they shot the genuine dockside scenes of Pretty Pants and Philip.
There we go. That's really interesting. Because I've wondered for a while where this sort of dock scene was, because I didn't recognise it from any of the other Stan and Babe films.
No, we don't see it elsewhere.
But the Port of Los Angeles, and talking about locations as well. I mean, obviously a lot of it was shot in Culver City, and I had somebody pointed out to me the other day about. As Stan and Babe are walking down the street in Culver City, and they stop, and Ollie's telling Stan, "You walk behind me," and then you can actually see the film crew in the reflection of the window, which is only very fleeting. But you see this tripod set up and all this, these little tiny details that you miss, so many years, and then suddenly it's there, and you can't stop seeing it. Then
that's it. Well, you can't unsee it. I know what you mean. Yeah. Although, as I think I visited you on a prior occasion, I'd actually spotted that in the 70s. Then I'd completely forgotten about it until you mentioned it. So maybe you can unsee it. I don't know. But hey, speaking of the camera crew, though, this is an interesting thing. Randy Scratton let us know that Art Lloyd impressed his then girlfriend Venice by getting her a crowd extra role in the movie.
That's right. In fact, he mentioned that on our last episode. He was telling us about that very sequence. Yeah, that's right.
And people wonder why this might have happened. What was Art Lloyd doing there when the official cameraman on it was George Stevens?
Yeah.
And I have a theory. It may not hold water. But I think that it's quite possible that George Stevens was manning camera A for domestic, and that Art Lloyd was on camera B for overseas.
Ah, right, yeah.
Because, of course, in silent days, they routinely had two cameras going for the domestic and overseas negatives.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
So I think Art Lloyd was on camera B.
That would make sense. Yeah, that would make sense. Absolutely.
So that is my theory. What it's worth.
It's a good one. I like it. There's not obviously a huge amount of supporting players, well, obvious supporting players. Randy Scratford himself mentioned Sam Lufkin. Who played the ship's doctor, checking for lice.
Yes, Sam Lufkin, my old alias, a joke alias.
Oh, right.
Yes, this won't mean anything now, but for a very long time, my articles for Rob Lewis's magazine were called Sam Lufkin Reports.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I tell you why this happened. It was an in-joke that came from one of the trivia quizzes. Because I think they still do them at conventions, but it used to be a big thing about the quiz.
Yeah.
I used to take part in rather a lot of there was one answer I got wrong. It was a fantastically arcane question. I was like, who played what in what? It was some dot of a role, I don't know. And I couldn't remember for sure, but I thought it might have been Sam Lufkin. Now, this was quite a long time ago, when not nearly as many of the supporting players are talked about as they are now. When I said this, I got a lot of blank looks, and I had people at the time and afterwards coming up to me and saying, "Who the hell's Sam Lufkin?" And because of this, for a while, the name Sam Lufkin hung around me. So I started to call these articles Sam Lufkin Reports.
Love it. That's great. And of course, everybody should know who Sam Lufkin is because of that one famous line.
I don't want you. I want that other monkey.
That's Sam Lufkin, isn't it?
Yeah. What about Butch is like an elephant? He never forgets. Or come on, Lug, get out of that chair. He has a choice. And I mean, at the time, I was surprised that people didn't know who Sam Lufkin was, but but it didn't. So yes, he was my unofficial alias for several years thereafter. I maintain a certain affection for Mr. Lufkin.
Yes,
but
very good.
Again, he, as the ship's doctor, is used to illustrate how unworldly, how naive Philip is.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is accidental because I think even then, decades before, say, present sensitivities, they knew that there might have been just on a little bit of dodgy ground having this sex maniac leaping in the air after a passing woman. They knew that this might just not be considered terribly acceptable unless they really rammed home the point. He's unworldly. He doesn't know. He doesn't understand. Only better. He does not comprehend the world around him. He's a child.
Yeah.
And it's certainly writ large in his dealings with the ship's doctor.
Yeah.
This is a man who leaves half a thermometer in his mouth, and of course there's that coy aspect again. This virginal aspect. Very discreet about revealing the fact that he was vaccinated on the behind rather than on the arm. And very discreetly whispered.
Yeah.
This is actually quite a prim character. For all the sexual enthusiasm, he's a virgin.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think it's little boys chasing little girls around the playground, isn't it, really? Yeah. They have no idea what they're going to do when they get there, but they're going to do it anyway.
Like dogs and cars, You ever seen a dog driving a car?
Not at the moment. No. Anything's possible.
Well, yes.
And one thing that always strikes me, and again, looking too deeply into things is probably killing the jokes. But when they come off the boat, there's obviously the old Scotsman who's on the same boat with Stan in his kilt, and it's his kilt that Ollie grabs hold of on the top deck of the bus. Who thinks, no, I've got him here.
Yes.
Why is no crowd following that old guy around? If a Scotsman in a kilt is so amazing to people,
I know it's a seeming anomaly, but it's got to be kind of behaviour. He's keeping his head down and his kilt.
Right.
In that
Okay.
order.
Okay.
Maybe not that order, but either both. They're both down. And he's not leaping around like a hyperactive jackrabbit, whereas Philip is.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be a combination of the two.
Yes. Yeah.
Each
That's
on their
very
own,
true.
you might get away with, but combine the two, you're going to draw a crowd.
Especially if you step over ventilation shafts.
Especially that, yes. and how did he not notice the underpants had descended? I mean, I think most of us would know.
They're just obviously very loose, aren't they? You know, people like their underwear loose.
I suppose they do. Boxers that took a dive, but no, I think we know. And again, that's the sort of thing that startles people. You do get the business where the drawers have gone, steps over the grating yet again, with just holds long enough to see the kilt blow up, and women faint.
I love that.
Yeah, I've always found that hilarious. I think
I love that.
There probably are some people who would not laugh at that.
Oh, no, surely not. That's one of the best scenes in the whole thing. I love it. Just that the timing of that little just edit straight from the kilt. Yeah, just about to blow up, and those women just pass out. It's great. Absolutely love that.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that the old boy just behaves himself. So he's
right.
Okay,
too much. I can let that go then. I'll let that go. That's fine.
Yeah. Did we mention his real name, by the way? The actor's name.
Well, the old guy.
Yeah, should we do this? I didn't know this, but apparently we owe the information to Robin Cook, who identified him as Alfred Fisher. And I didn't know this until recently. But
get off!
I know nothing about Alfred Fisher.
No,
the old Scots famous. So, but no, thanks to Robin Cook, we know who he is.
Thank you, Robin.
Yeah,
brilliant. Well, that's good. Alfred Fisher. Alfred Fisher Reports will be my next article in the Laurel Hardy magazine.
Never be hit with that title.
Oh, great stuff. And so we're on the subject of supporting characters. So obviously, the main supporting character we have in Putting Pants on Philip has to be the as we said before, the wonderful Dorothy Coburn. What can you tell us about Dorothy? Glenn?
What can we say? That wouldn't be an understatement. She was wonderful. One of those women they had at Hull Roach who were both gorgeous and very funny. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
You say. I mean, she looms large, even though she's quite petite. In a lot of the earlier Laurel Hardys, we do see her as being cave woman in Flying Elephant. Mentioned this.
Yes.
But she's certainly, she's not just in Laurel Hardy's, of course. I mentioned Dumb Daddies a bit earlier, which Pollard and Lowback Riddler. She's the one who does that superb bit with the lost female store dummy leg, which she takes on the pavement. She takes a spill, and her own leg folds under her, and the prop leg is in the position where her own should be.
I remember it. Yes, I remember.
And she thinks she's got a dead leg. There's a title card that says, "I'm ruined." Just jingling, heartbroken, exploring this inanimate dead leg. And she tries to get up and manages to do so, and finds the genuine leg has reappeared. It's a fantastic moment.
Very good.
But of the Laurel and Hardys, yes. I mean, wonderful as the nurse in the finishing touch. Very
yes.
Lots of attitude there, and in the movie she's terrific. But in stills, there are loads of bag stills from the finishing touch. Nothing to do with the movie. That was the trouble we never got into with Flying Elephants. Huge number of production stills that were obviously taken separately because the costume was different. And different cast. Edna Marion's in there, which is not in the movie. And so on. And they've all got MGM serial numbers where it was a Pathé.
Oh, of course, that's right, And Stan's wig is different. He's got a dark wig on, I think.
Different again. And I don't think anybody's ever figured out quite what's going on there. But the finishing touch stills, she's doing all sorts of stuff.
Funnily enough, I was just sharing some of those on our Facebook page just yesterday, I think it was, where they see on like a seesaw with Stan and Babe, and
oh yes,
just they look like they're having such a fun time on that set. It looks amazing. I love those stills. They are some of my favourite stills, actually.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yes, I mean they're just a joy to watch, and it's one of the things about Laurel and Hardy was that their stills are funny. Most comedian stills are not very funny as a rule. And for those, and she's clearly having a whale of a time with them. They're really obviously enjoying each other's company.
Yes. Yeah. There's a really nice candid one, I think, where they're all sitting down. Have you seen that one? They're all sort of just laughing, looking at something off. Beautiful shot, absolutely beautiful shot. Love that. Yeah,
there's a real esprit de corps there, and some of the other ones. I mean, she doesn't get an awful lot to. She's the discomfited dinner guest and from Soup. The dog passes between her legs on the table. Be a gentleman. The dog eating a banana. You don't see many of those. And, of course, the relative throwaway thing. She's one of the nurses in Leave 'Em Laughing, along with Viola Richard.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of altercation between the two of them, which should have been explored further, but wasn't. Kick up behind, I think, was going on. But of course, behind, oh dear, not to think about. Wiggling along, but the second 100 years, she is the one whose bottom gets beat.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Of course.
Yeah, and
the son getting a little behind in his work. I think was the phrase from one of the Youngson stills, isn't it?
Yeah, but she's just so good in them, and this, I suppose, is her most extended appearance. Finishing probably runs it close, but she's in and out of this, and she's really wonderful. You wonder why she's wandering along the dockside in the first place. What is the motive there for strolling around the dock? And she was sauntering. She's not in a hurry.
Yes. But we perhaps shouldn't look at that too closely. No. We shouldn't think too deeply about that one.
No.
Perhaps she's just got off the boat and she's got lost.
You could be right. Yeah, no luggage. But no. It's a two-reel comedy. This is no exposition. We shouldn't really think.
Yes.
And she certainly isn't interested in promptly male attention. Otherwise, she wouldn't be running like hell from Philip. But no, she's wonderful. And initially, of course, she's amused. Her reaction to him changes as the film progresses. Initially, she is as amused by him as the crowd. She looks and smiles, and she seems, to giggle. And of course, she goes off. And of course, he loves this. He's smiling. Oh yeah. After a while, she's panicking. You see her spotting him at a distance, and her hands go up, and she looks horrified. She's running for it. And was it 2 or 3 occasions she actually is seeking refuge with the policeman at the main intersection of town. She's trying to get the cop to get this man to go away. So by this time she's seeking assistance. And then it reaches acceptance and coping strategies. Towards the end, she spots Philip and Uncle yet again, and instead of doing a wonderful amount of things like she did before, and then that bit where she trots up, sees Philip, and immediately turns on the heel and goes back which way she came, without missing a beat. Superbly timed and executed, wonderful. But this time, the other tactics are needed, and she's learning to cope, and she gently steps around them, giving them a sort of wide circle. And then when Uncle Ollie wants to officiate on behalf of Philip and bring this farce to an end, she gives him the air, the nice flick on the
on the nose,
on the nose. She can cope, she can handle herself and dismiss these unwanted. And she doesn't try to flee when Philip wants to do the Walter Raleigh bit of the kill. He can even turn off to the side and spin any direction, but no, she waits for him to do this.
Yeah.
And then doesn't need it. She nimbly skips across the across the mud, and then turns to him with a big smile and makes fun of him.
Yes.
You know, she's on top of this. Imitates his scissors kick, and with a big grin goes off on her way, and that's, as far as she's concerned, is it. You know, she has mastered this situation.
Yeah,
so she's in control in the end, but superbly played. And actually, the orderly way in which she allows him to go through the motions of the Walter Raleigh bit reminds me of her a bit in the earlier part of the fight in Battle of the Century.
Yeah.
I mean, she is brought into it after the first splash and wants to know what's going on. When it comes to the beginning exchanges of violence, Stan stops her and moves Charlie Hall gently out of the way with a little tip of the hat and she acknowledges it with a nod of its thank you, and a nod of thank you nod before getting into the fight.
Yeah.
It's so civilized. You know, it's observing the niceties amid mayhem.
Yes,
and she
does, absolutely.
And she does it as well as they do.
Yeah, she was very good. And as you say, she certainly could handle herself, as she proved in Flying Elephants, and when she gives Stan a good duffing. Yeah,
well, she was, you know, no shrinking violet anyway. I mean, her biographical details are quite interesting in that regard. She was quite something. She doesn't really do much in talkies because, as we know, Laurel and Hardy valued the young women in the cast. We know that. We knew how good they were, but it was all down to whom Hal Roach wanted to continue to employ. And one of his more inexplicable moves was to get rid of Dorothy Coburn, Edna Marion, Viola Richard, and one or two others around 1928, in the 28. And he lost a lot of potential talent there, a lot of very good potential star female comics there. And that's when she went, and they sort of trickled back a bit, but not very much. I mean, I caught Dorothy Coburn in an early Our Gang talkie called Shivering Shakespeare, and I think that's probably the only time I've heard her voice, and that was only fleetingly. And I thought I detected a fairly heavy New York accent, but you can't really go by the old line. But turns out, actually, she wasn't from New York at all. She was from born in Montana and raised in Arizona. Yeah, her dad was a cowboy poet and a producer. And where the Buffalo,
I don't often hear that mixed, do you?
Well, not where the Buffalo roam. By the name of Wallace Coburn, and his brother was the author Walt Coburn. So, you know, there are a few eminent people in that family. And,
yeah.
And she did a lot of stunt work on horseback with actors like Gary Cooper, Joel McRae, and perhaps incongruously also doubled for Ginger Rogers at RKO. Whether she ever did a dance routine on a horse, I don't know.
Well, that's the film I haven't seen.
Well, exactly. I mean, not top bridle. But either way, though. But no, apparently she was experienced on horseback, and with that Western background, it's not a big surprise, I suppose. But Rogers, but I didn't know until recently, and apparently she quit the film business in the mid-30s and became a receptionist.
Did she really?
Yeah, which one would have thought
I didn't know that.
Yeah, something of an anticlimax after the thing she had been doing. Well, maybe by then she was yearning for a quiet life. I don't know. But,
yes, I suppose after a few years with Laurel and Hardy, you might want to lie down somewhere.
Yeah, it's very possible. But one of my great regrets, though, was she was still around until 1978. And as far as I know, nobody interviewed her. But that is
such a shame.
Yeah, there were so many who were not interviewed, despite living well into the period when people were interested in them and knew what they were. Nobody got to them. But it's easy to say about our event, of course. Very easy to say.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, it points the finger, really. I mean, if she, decided to let all of this sort of acting career go and become a receptionist, and then didn't want to get involved later in years to reflect on that time of her career, maybe something happened that she just wanted to move away from them, black it out.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. If a career didn't go as they wanted, perhaps, or if they'd had some unpleasant experiences, who knows?
Yeah,
Hard to tell. But some of them did really just leave it behind them and want to leave it behind them.
Yeah.
Actually, was one of those.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Somebody of such obvious good humour, though, it seems hard to imagine her becoming kind of reclusive about. But to envisage that.
Yeah, it would have been lovely to have seen her in some of the in the talkies as one of the wives or something, because I think she would have added a lot to those. Yeah, because she had such a lot of sort of fire and zeal in the characters that she portrayed.
Yes, so much. And you could imagine her, for example, as one of the dock-eyed floozies of our relations.
Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah, that would absolutely
see that. Just as an example, but that we'll never know.
Wasn't to be. Yeah, wasn't to be.
Yes, the wonderful Dorothy Coburn. Anything else I could add now seems superfluous.
Yeah. No, I think that's it. There's only there aren't any other supporting actors we can talk about it.
Oh, really? Well, Harvey Clark, who plays the tailor, one and only appearance with Laurel Hardy.
That's right. Yeah.
In about 200 odd films, but only one with them, and it's that's another thing as well. When people talk about the Laurel and Hardys, they like less than some of the others. Sometimes I think it's influenced by unfamiliar supporting players. They like to see the usual cast.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good point.
It's too much with an unfamiliar face. It's orientating, and maybe if Clark could turn up in a few more of them, it would feel different. But
possibly, yeah. If it was perhaps Billy Gilbert or somebody like that, it would probably be a different feel altogether, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's a good point.
Imagine Edgar Kennedy playing it.
Yeah,
which he could have done.
Yes, I could quite imagine Edgar Kennedy playing that role. Yeah.
Or frankly, to conform more to the stereotypes of the period, Max Davidson.
Yeah.
In fact, in retrospect, I'm surprised he didn't, given the continuing overlaps between Laurel and Hardy and Davidson at that time.
Yeah, and also looking at some of the correspondence between the Roach executives, I think from this particular point, they're considering. Are they considering replacing the Davidson series for the Laurel and Hardy series? I think
so, because they were already being lent on about the stereotypical aspect of them. They were getting noises, and I think they wanted to end the series anyway. So yes, so I can well believe. I don't pretend to know this, but I can imagine that they would logically see the Laurel and Hardys as replacing them. Yes.
Yeah. I was reading, I think, in Craig Kalman's book. Yeah, exactly that. They were talking about the Laurel and Hardys are getting really great reviews and getting stronger and stronger, and we're thinking about. I'm sure there is one that specifically mentions phasing out the Davidsons and bringing in the Laurel and Hardy series and replace, and really pushing those two guys.
Yeah.
Which is a smart move.
Yes, absolutely, and intriguing, isn't it? Though that Davidson stepped in to replace a missing Stan Laurel on one occasion. What should have been a Laurel and Hardy?
Yeah,
and just because Stan had taken too long to get back home from England.
Yes, was that Love 'Em and Feed 'Em? Yeah. Which is
another one of Clyde Bruckman's.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Was Dorothy Coburn in that one? No, but Viola Richard was in that one, wasn't she?
Viola Richard, yes. I can't remember. I don't know. I've seldom looked at it, but it's so frustrating to look at that fragment.
Yes, that's right.
I've watched it a few times, but I can't look at it too often because it's just so annoying. But that's all there is, this decomposed scrap. Yeah,
it's a shame. It's a shame. And again, we have to be very thankful and grateful that we've got as much of Stan and Babe's work as we have. It's incredible, really. I know we mourn the loss of, the missing hats off. I wouldn't say the loss of it, but
unavailability, certainly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is only a one-off, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, at times looking at putting hats on Philip now, I won't. Because there's obviously competition in some shots coming in. Doing the fade in on the Taylor's scene, for example, there's some people there and some other hints to it around, and then some of the other shots there are bits. And it's not Youngson's material. That's what's frustrating. Youngson was going to the 35mm materials on these when they were still okay. And preserve them in a sense. The lot, why should he? It wasn't his job. But that's why he finished up having a complete 16mm copy of the second 100 years, whereas the later materials, by the time Bangkok films were doing it, they got the materials, they started to decompose. There's a bit missing from the usual prints of second 100 years because of that. This is paint all over it. And some of the scenes at the beginning, they try to escape. There's very obvious decomposition in the tunneling scenes. Not in Youngson's material, either his own complete print or in what he used in Golden Age of Comedy. He was using footage from Pants on Philip in Laughing Twenties, and again in Four Clowns. And he had good 35. Black Hawk filmed 16mm prints is what people have essentially gone to ever since for a lot of the Laurel and Hardy silence, because that's all there is. And they inherited the decomposition that had been allowed to get in by the time they printed their material. And so there are bits of Philip in the usual copies now where I just feel like crying because it was left just too late to preserve this in a pristine form. Could have done.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. But like I say, I think taking a step back, we just have to be grateful we have what we have. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, even like, I always think about the Marx Brothers, I love the Marx Brothers films, but there's so few of them. And so
yes.
we sort of moan about not having hats off, but good God, we've got 105 whatever films to go at. Yeah. It's pretty good. We're pretty lucky.
We have a lot. We have almost everything of Laurel and Hardy, and we should be grateful for that. And they made so many. As you say, the Marx Brothers made relatively few films, so we don't have that much of them in positive terms, but, and even then, a couple of instances, we're seeing not the best copies. They've improved Coconuts somewhat. With Horse Feathers, we still can't see the complete print. But yeah, W.C. Fields, fairly prolific, but nowhere near as prolific as Laurel and Hardy. And the gaps in his silence are still fairly significant. We're still missing the three Paramounts. We did the Chester Conklin, I think, and there are others, and there are other gaps as well. We don't have anything like complete silent W.C. Fields. So yes, you're right. We are very, very fortunate when it comes to Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah,
very fortunate.
Yeah, we can't complain. We should stop complaining.
I don't know. I complain about everything else. But
brilliant.
That's great. Prosperity served Laurel and Hardy very well, and vice versa. So
yeah, that's right.
And anything else that comes back is a bonus.
Yes, that's quite right. Absolutely right. Right. Have you got anything else on Philip, Glenn? My notes are dry.
I think
so
mine might be. Only one thing that I did want to ponder.
Mm-hmm.
The reference to the Bide a Wee Club.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Now, okay, it's a Scottish expression meaning stay a while.
Right.
But it seems to have been had some connection with the idea of offering a sort of temporary foster home or accommodation just for orphans. Come and stay a while with a de facto foster parent or two. Because I always remember the Tom and Jerry cartoon called The Little Orphan, where a baby mouse is sent to spend Thanksgiving with Jerry. And he's from the Bide a Wee Mouse Home, mouse orphanage. So I've long wondered if it referred to some sort of real-life organisation of that type, where orphans go to stay with de facto foster parents for a short period. I don't know. It just seems an odd thing. But again, it does take us back to Philip as child.
Yes.
Is if he's an orphan infant there by courtesy of the Bide a Wee Club. But there we go. But, yeah. So this was H.M. Walker's work, of course.
Yes.
So the reference was clearly known to him, if not the rest of us.
as you say, it must have been fairly well known for him to have put that in, because that's quite an obscure thing to just throw in as a main title card.
Yeah, to an American audience particularly, I'd have thought. Unless there was some sort of organisation that was familiar to them with that name or similar.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, maybe sort of Scottish immigrants or something, falling on hard times, maybe, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? The tea for the adoption of Caledonian waits.
So last time when we spoke, I dropped you off at a desert island, if you remember.
Yes, gosh.
On your atoll. So as I'm passing, I just thought I'd offer you the option. Are you still happy with the films that you've chosen, or would you like to swap anything?
No, thank you. I'm all right. I would like a carton of cigarettes and a crate of beer, though.
Well, I'm sorry, due to Brexit, you'll have to wait for a good few years to receive those.
I understand, yes. It's an inevitable consequence. But, No. I shall survive on me diet of raw fish and packets.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I think we've probably exhausted putting pants on Philip there, Glenn. It's been wonderful to talk through that with you.
I enjoyed it.
All that I think that remains is to say thank you very much indeed for joining us. Oh no, there is one thing. I had a little. There was something I wanted to just. You talked about quizzes earlier.
Oh yes.
And there was something that occurred to me, and I wanted to try this out on you. I have 3 questions. There was 5, but I can't remember the other 2.
I knew I shouldn't have.
And I don't know if you've seen. There's a program on TV. Not that I watch TV very much. I didn't get the chance, but there's a program on TV with Richard Osman, and it's the House of Games, I think it's called.
Oh, right.
And he does something called the answer smash at the end. Okay, so it's one question that has 2 answers smashed together. So what you're looking for is two Laurel and Hardy film titles that end with the same word and begin with the same word. Okay, I'll give you a clue. And see if you can get it. So just a bit of fun. There's no prize. There's no prizes. So we have. So let me think. So the question would be something like, marrying each other's sisters leads to a row of devastated cars.
Oh, well, twice 2 and 2 tars.
Yes, exactly. So we've got twice 2 tars. Yes, okay. Exactly right. Okay. Yeah. So the next one would be small boots leads to selling Christmas trees.
Be big business.
Yes.
I'm going to be for this now, yeah.
And the last one that I've got for you, unless I can quickly remember the other 2, the last one I have is hiding a goat leads to blackmail.
Oh dear, Angora Loveman Weep.
Yes, Angora Loveman Weep.
That was getting obscure with that pre-teaming one.
Yes.
Yeah, I had to think for a moment.
Good. Very good. There was 2 more. I made a note of them, and of course I've lost the note. So that is frustrating. I'll have to save those for next time.
Oh, somebody else can do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll pass that on to somebody else. Brilliant. No, that's great. That is all I have for you, Glenn. Thank you ever so much indeed for joining us. It's been an absolute blast once again.
Thanks, Patrick. I really enjoyed it.
Hopefully you'll be okay to come on another episode.
Yes. If you can live with all the bad jokes.
Oh, well, absolutely. We live for bad jokes. No problem.
I thought they ended themselves bad jokes.
Yeah.
No, but thanks, Patrick. It's great.
And that's great. Yeah, thank you ever so much, Dan. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you because you've got so much information. It's great stuff.
No, I really enjoyed it. It's great.
So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed our little look at Putting Pants on Philip. It's such a funny film. And do let me know what your thoughts are about the film and also about anything that we've talked about on the show today. As we discussed, this was the last time that Stan and Babe played roles other than the Stan and Ollie characters that we know and love. So we've got some absolutely classic comedies coming up to talk about in the next few episodes, starting with the very next one, where we'll be looking at the Battle of the Century. So make sure you don't miss that by clicking the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whichever podcast platform you use. Now, at the start of the show, I hinted at a special announcement that I wanted to make. Well, I'm going to have to string the detail out for a little longer, but I can tell you that I've been putting a short video together, filming a video over the last couple of weeks, which is one of the reasons this episode was slightly delayed. But yeah, I've put together a short video with something really special that I wanted to share with you. It'll be going live hopefully this week sometime on the Laurel and Hardy blog YouTube channel, but I will put links on the Facebook pages too, so you won't miss it at all. And on the subject of Facebook, you may have seen my recent post celebrating our Blogheads community Facebook group passing the 1,000 members mark. I'm so pleased with this, as it's an amazing group. It's a real pleasure to be a part of it. And I was astounded, actually, how quickly we went from 500 members to over 1,000. It was just in just less than a month. So if you've not joined us yet, you are more than welcome. It's completely free to join. Just go to Facebook and search for Blogheads Group. So I'll stop waffling on, but I must say thank you to our brilliant guest, Glenn Mitchell. Thank you to the Bohunks Orchestra for the fabulous music. And don't forget you can find affiliate links to buy their CDs and Glenn's books and much more besides in the show notes and of course on the Laurel and Hardy blog website shop pages. But most of all, thank you to you for spending this time with me again. It's always an absolute blast. And until next time, it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Goodbye.